Hey there, delighted to be joined by Assemblyman Ron Kim, who represents Queens in New York City. And I wanted to have you on, Assemblyman, because there's been obviously a lot in the news about multiple Cuomo brothers. And most recently, Chris Cuomo, who was CNN's primetime host, but CNN fired him. What we know about his firing is, you know, Chris Cuomo had come out months ago and said he kind of advised his brother, Governor Cuomo, or ex Governor Cuomo, um, as he was, you know, uh, the recipient of several sexual harassment claims. But he kind of left it at that. I advised him, he was my brother, blah, 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 blah. And last week, Attorney General of New York, Letitia James, she released quite a few text messages, emails showing that Chris Cuomo was doing far more than advising Governor Cuomo. He was actively, basically, an unofficial member of his staff, trying to do damage control, trying to dig up dirt, at least on one of the women who was making sexual harassment accusations against Governor Cuomo. In addition, was trying to use his perch as a journalist to speak with other journalists to basically figure out when the next shoe was going to drop, when stories were coming out negative about Governor Cuomo, if there were any other women that might be coming out. So CNN fired Governor Cuomo for that. So I'm not here to minimize Chris Cuomo's cooperation and basically working as a journalist while also working as a political operative. That seems to be a fireable offense to me. But in all the discussion about Chris Cuomo's firing, to me, what's been lost, and you were at the forefront, is indirectly, or maybe we don't even know directly, Chris Cuomo also helped whitewash Governor Cuomo, sending thousands and thousands of old senior citizens back to nursing homes with COVID, who died, unfortunately, including your uncle, who passed away. Um, it came out during all of this that Governor Cuomo, his staff, had covered up the actual death count at nursing homes. It came out that Governor Cuomo had basically called you and threatened you not to be public against him as far as these nursing home deaths. I don't know. I don't have proof of this, but I would have to assume that if Chris Cuomo is so close with his governor brother that he was talking to his staff in response to the sexual harassment claims against his brother, perhaps he might have been communicating with them about the nursing homes too. So I wanted to start with, what are your initial thoughts on Chris Cuomo's firing? And is it kind of bittersweet in a way that, yes, he's being fired related to his inappropriate breach of journalistic ethics, but his firing has nothing to do with essentially him helping his brother whitewash the nursing home deaths?
Yeah, I think those are very good questions, and I don't think we're done in holding Andrew Cuomo, Chris Cuomo fully accountable for their actions in whitewashing, in stonewalling, covering up nursing home deaths, as well as committing, in my opinion, a criminal public fraud. You can't go out and promote false data that can lead to even more deaths. With the kind of platform that he had, and that's what him and his brother ended up doing, that took away our ability to legislate. If we had that information in real time, we would have went in a different direction, not allow him to write these deadly policies at the peak of the pandemic, like handing out a near blanket immunity for nursing home operators, which disincentivize people from investing more into nursing homes. But justice is justice. The survivors, the woman, they deserve every ounce of this justice. They stepped up, and they didn't have to. They could have been hurt, and they continue to be targeted as we speak by the Como you know Como syndicate, and they're still continuing to speak up. So they deserve all of this, and I think it is the process, because it is somewhat more, I think, direct and efficient to hold individual misdeeds, like misconducts, as like sexual harassment, when it involves just him and another person. When it involves the nursing home scandal, we're talking about a an ecosystem of corruption that needs a thorough reckoning to get this right. And there's a lot of decisions, a lot of individuals and powerful groups that may be dragged down if everything comes to light, including Chris Cuomo, including possibly CNN. Like, who else got VIP COVID test? Now, I'm pretty confident it wasn't just Chris Cuomo that got the VIP COVID test. And what was that VIP COVID test worth at the peak of the pandemic last year when none of us had access to these tests? And what kind of political favors did that curry for Andrew Cuomo? I mean, those are the type of questions that we need to go back and connect the dots on. But it will take some time to do that.
Right. And Colin, if you could put this up, I just want to remind the audience, if they kind of escaped them, this is from the New York Times. Cuomo aides rewrote nursing home report to hide higher death toll. The intervention was the earliest action yet known in an effort by Governor Cuomo that concealed how many nursing home residents died in the pandemic. Top aides to Governor Cuomo were alarmed. A report written by state health officials had just landed, and it included accounts of how many nursing home residents in New York had died in the pandemic. The number, more than 9,000 by that point in June, was not public, and the governor's most senior aides wanted to keep it that way. They rewrote the report to take it out, according to interviews and documents reviewed by the New York Times. So, like you said, I mean, this is a criminal act, concealing or doctoring data. I've seen it in other instances in the Flint water crisis in terms of water testing being manipulated by the former governor's administration. But in this case, Chris Cuomo, again, we don't know. I mean, it all should be investigated. But again, it seems that his modus operandi was family first, as he put it. So he was, his role as an anchor came second. I'm going to be texting my governor's staff about, trying to get them on message or help craft a message in response to these sexual harassment claims. But it should be noted, while Chris Cuomo was having his brother on throughout the pandemic on CNN, it became must-see TV, them kind of palling around, there were public criticisms and politicians like you making noise about his nursing home policies. So it's not like Chris Cuomo, as he was having his brother on, was unaware of the questions, complaints, cries for help going on. What do you think? I mean, you can't get in his head, but what do you think, looking back now, seeing how involved he was with his brother in damage control, in kind of crisis PR about the sexual harassment claims? Do you think it's possible that he was in communications with his brother or anyone in his brother's staff in relation to information they were putting out about the nursing homes?
I mean, I don't want to speculate. I think that's why we need an investigation. But the facts are that, yes, I was even on CNN around that time on a different show talking about the nursing homes. So right before his show. So he definitely knew this was happening on the ground and it was problematic. He also knew that he probably also knew that his brother was in the middle of chasing down a $5.1 million book deal that relied on false data to get that much amount, because there was a race to the top among publishers to get to that amount, which is, by the way, Jordan, which is a ridiculous amount of money. This $5.1 million, for the public to understand, that is the kind of money that this would be the #1 political book of all time to get that kind of a contract. And secondly, he was clearly protecting his donor class, Andrew Cuomo, with some of these policies that was designed to shield the profits of hospitals and nursing homes at the peak of the pandemic. It wasn't designed around families and protecting residents and patients. We actually took away their rights to recourse, the governor did, at the peak of the pandemic. And in order to protect those two things, the donors and his book deal, the data had to reflect that it wasn't that bad. He had to go out to the CNN, to go out to the public and reassure that, hey, we're number 47 out of 50 in nursing home deaths. That's what he was saying. When our report, independent report, with limited information, showed that we're number 2 or number 1 behind New Jersey. And that's, instead of telling that truth, which would have pushed our families to make better decisions. Because there were people that went in with just injuries to recuperate and got COVID and passed away. families are coming up now. If I had known the truth, I would have taken my father out of the nursing home, and he would have spent recovering at home. And he
Mhm.
took away our ability to do that. And for that, he needs to be held accountable, and his brother, if he played a role.
Right. And you know, another thing that must have been frustrating for you, and again, one isn't more important than the other. I think all the claims against Governor Cuomo, sexual harassment, in some cases inappropriate touching. It seems like revelations have come out that his staff and administration was just a giant mess, and a toxic work environment. So all that is relevant, and all that is good reason for him to resign. But it seems in terms of the media attention on Cuomo, it seemed that it was tough to get the media to focus on the nursing home issue. Uh, they but they raced to focus on the accusations against him. Did you find that as you were? I mean, eventually there were some stories, but I mean, other than David Sirota for a while and very few outlets, the media wasn't really reporting on the nursing home scandal. Looking back on it, you know, what are your thoughts on the fact that the media seems to focus when it comes to Andrew Cuomo about the downfall in terms of the women, the nursing home, not as much?
Well, I think it's a societal, cultural, systemic flaw. We are, even though there's so much ageism against older people, our liberal establishment, we are very good, including the liberal media, at policing racism and sexism. That's been documented how we reached this point. But when we have older people die at thousands, 16,000, Jordan, just think about this number: 16,000 seniors died during this COVID, and there are thousands that we could have saved. They transferred 9,000 COVID patients in 57 days to unprepared nursing homes through his policies. When every other state realized it was a mistake and they went the other direction, he doubled down on these type of policies. So we treated seniors as if it's their duty. It's their duty to die in these type of facilities, and society kind of shrugs and walks away, saying, "Well, you know, they're old, and we have to make a choice. This is what," and they don't care. And I think this is why I feel so passionate about this topic. There
Right.
has to be a reckoning. This is New York is the wealthiest state in the nation. There is zero reason why we had these many deaths. We had the resources, the money, the funding to do the right thing. If we chose not to do the right thing, and for that, people need to be held accountable.
And I also think, let's face it, I mean, this is not just a Chris Cuomo thing. This is an entire media thing. I mean, they elevated Andrew Cuomo as, you know, Jesus of Nazareth in the early stages of the pandemic. Granted, he was governor of the biggest state, where had the biggest death count. So I'm not against that they held his press conferences every day, but the puff pieces that were going on about Andrew Cuomo, even buzz that possibly he would step in, you know, chatter that Biden might not finish as the Democratic nominee at that point. I mean, the media was slobbering over Governor Cuomo, and in some ways, choosing not to even look into not just his decisions to send sick seniors back to nursing homes, but the blanket immunity that you spoke about, which is pretty scandalous that he gave political donors at these nursing homes blanket immunity for whatever happened due to COVID-19. So the media, it seems to me, was in a bit of a box. They had elevated Governor Cuomo to the point that it would be tough for them to then investigate his actions on the nursing homes.
Yeah, that's right. But and I think there's other elements as well, other political leaders that were in positions to do more,
Mm.
like the state comptroller, Attorney General Tish James stepped up and released her reports, which expedited all these things to occur. But there are other people in positions of power that should have checked the governor, and they did not. A lot of people institutionally just looked the other way. Along with some of the established media class during that time, to a point where, and I'm a progressive left Democrat, where I had nowhere else to go. It's like I had to do press conferences with Republicans who were the only ones that were willing to stand with me on this issue last year. I dropped a 60-page report to the United Nations saying there was a crime against humanity happening in the state of New York, and someone needs to pay attention to this because no one else was paying attention. So yeah, I mean, I at times I was frustrated, demoralized, and I just couldn't understand what was going on. But I'm glad that um, early this year, Tish James and many others started to step in and tell the truth. And we're finally here where we're seeing a little bit of justice and accountability. But there's a lot more accountability that needs to be uh, done in the near future.
Can I ask you? Obviously, you're a politician, so you're not like a media critic. But I just your thoughts on Chris Cuomo's response to his termination, because now there's talk that he might sue CNN for the rest of his contract. He's alleging that CNN knew the extent of his involvement in his brother's defense. His spokesperson said his firing was unwarranted, and he kind of hid under that cloak of family first. And I wasn't covering my brother's sexual harassment scandals. So basically, whatever I did on my own time, it wasn't affecting my journalism. Yada yada. I mean, what was your response to? It seems his stubborn uh, defense of not doing anything wrong.
It's very indicative of how his brother conducted himself. Well, he's drowning and he wants to drag as many people down with him. It seems like that's the Cuomo model, right? When things are good, everyone is just me. Everyone pay attention. All roads lead to Andrew Cuomo or Chris Cuomo. Where things are bad, they want to drag down as many people with them as possible. And I think that's why CNN has a tremendous responsibility to the community at large, that they need to step in, be fully transparent. What was, do expand the investigation beyond the woman that are involved. Let's look at what the communication was around nursing homes. What happened with the VIP COVID test? Who else did Chris Cuomo hand out this lucrative state-backed VIP COVID test, and what kind of favors did that earn Andrew Cuomo? Those. If CNN steps in and does all of that, I think it can be a transformative moment for all media to look at CNN and say, okay, we are in a new era of a media accountability and political accountability, and we're not going back.
Absolutely. And can I kind of talk about, because you were also fighting for legislation while Governor Cuomo was still governor, to reverse a lot of the policies he did in terms of nursing homes. Can you kind of tell the audience what came of that? He's obviously not the governor anymore. Has the new governor been a little bit easier to work with on some of these policies that previous Governor Cuomo had implemented in terms of corporate blanket immunity and things like that?
Yeah, last year we were able to partially repeal the corporate immunity based on reporting by yourself and Sirota and a couple of the reporters that came out, national reports that came out. They gave us a little bit of a win. We modified the blanket immunity, but it wasn't good enough. But once the Attorney General came out with her report to agree with me that giving out corporate immunity was a bad idea and it led to more deaths, potentially more deaths, we had the ammunition to go back and fully repeal. So that's what we did early this year, restoring people's right to recourse. So there was a time, Jordan, when we had a long-term crisis 30 years ago. We went the other direction and we created the Nursing Home Residents Bill of Rights. Instead of giving blanket immunity, we went to the people and strengthened their right to recourse. Meaning, if the operator did something bad, now I had a right to take them to court and have bigger settlements. So when there's a monetary incentive for the market to do better, they tend to do so because they don't want to lose money. And instead, we give them a get out of jail free card saying, well, they can't sue us. I can't go to jail. Why do I need to buy more PPE or hire more staff?
Right. And I'd like to ask you broader, because I see a lot of the things Governor Cuomo was doing. And granted, this was an urgent, acute global pandemic. There were politicians that made decisions that on retrospect were bad. The difference is Cuomo covered up his bad decisions while other politicians, the results were the results. But I wanted to ask you as a progressive, I see the current president and his press secretary recently, she was asked, what's with like people being reimbursed for at-home COVID tests? Why don't you just mail people free COVID tests like Europe is doing, like other far less wealthy countries are doing? Because obviously there's a lot of ways we could curb and hopefully end the pandemic at some point. But number one is people having quick access to at-home cares as soon as they feel ill. And her response was kind of like, there's no such thing as a free lunch, even with the global pandemic. Basically, she kind of shrugged it off and said, oh, we should send everybody, and kind of talked about the cost of that. It just seems to be backwards thinking during a pandemic for them to be focusing on cost when literally yesterday they just approved, not they, Congress just approved $768 billion defense budget. This was more than President Biden even asked for. So your thoughts just on the current mentality of the Biden administration? It's still going through private insurance. We can't make it just free and direct to the people.
Yeah, some days I wake up feeling hopeful that Joe Biden actually is on side with the MMT and the new monetary mindset that we can actually spend towards saving people's lives without causing inflation. We've proven to do so. But other days like yesterday, I'm like, oh, nothing has changed. This is the same old model. But I do feel like there are some good people in the administration that are constantly whispering to the right people that this is a new era. He might not be FDR, but let's at least recognize that monetary policy is not how people or politicians perceive it to be, especially at the federal level. They have the power of the purse, and they have the means to save people's lives. It's that simple. It's not the states, locality. They don't have to. They're not mandated to balance the budgets. They can spend toward people's savings lives, and that's what they should be doing.
Right. And also, I believe in modern monetary theory too, but let's just say, for argument's sakes, you want to entertain this neoliberal mindset. Everything's got to be paid for. We can't just send everything free. Well, it's more expensive to not provide that, because it's just, yes, this pandemic might ultimately just become endemic. It's not exactly going to completely end. COVID might be a thing, but if you could stop more transmission, meaning people could take tests at home, they see they're positive, they quarantine, this and that, you have less disruption to the economy, to business, to just society, because people have access to tests and people quarantine, and thus less transmission. So it just seems like they don't get that in the long run, you're actually going to save money by spending money on the front end.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the problem is that it's not that. I think their problem is they're focused on immediate market disruptions, and that's all we hear, even at the local level, right? When we have progressive bills that talks about sustainable growth and helping people's health, etc., people always end up debating, what does this do to market stability? They still do that among fully democratic states, where people are hyper focused on how disruptive certain policies will be to the immediate markets. But to your point, they're not even focused on long-term markets and long-term protection. They're just focused about, oh, what is this going to do to insurance companies and farmer companies? And we need industry stability. Those are the two words that people have hid behind to cause corruption, suppression of workers, exploitation of our lands, destroying our planet, all behind those two words, industry stability. So whenever you hear those two words out of a politician's mouth, all red flags should go up, and we should question every intent behind what they're saying.
Yeah. And my last question before I let you go, listen, CNN can say whatever they want. They say they're still going to investigate, even though Chris Cuomo's fired. I don't know if they're actually going to. But if you had the ear of CNN's president, Jeff Zucker, what do you want them to look into? Because as we talked about in the beginning of this conversation, again, we can't prove it, but I don't know how you look at how entrenched Chris Cuomo was working with his brother's staff in terms of the sexual harassment accusations, basically asking to draft statements and be rapid fire response, be the head of it, essentially. How you could see that and not wonder, what was his communication with them about these nursing home cover up? What would you like CNN to investigate?
Yeah, we're actually, it's funny you bring this up because as we speak, our office is sending you can't really see it here, but a letter to uh, Jeff Zucker requesting that he expand the internal investigation specifically into the VIP COVID test and any other kind of favors that might have occurred with Andrew Cuomo's office and other communications that have occurred beyond the current investigations around sexual harassment. And we plan on and making the argument that this isn't. I'm not trying to play gotcha with you or demonize or vilify your CNN, but this is an opportunity for you to really be a model newslet to show others that this is how you really conduct yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Assemblymember Kim. Again, for people that don't know, you lost your uncle in a nursing home during COVID. So this is personal to you. And thank you for being one of those lonely people on the island who are fighting Governor Cuomo publicly about this cover up. Yeah, keep up the good fight.
Great. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks. So that was Assemblymember Ron Kim, who was really leading the charge, demanding actual information about the real number of seniors who died in nursing homes due to COVID that Governor Cuomo's policies sent back to the nursing homes, even if they had COVID, which is still mind-boggling that he did that. Then after it came out that Cuomo's administration fudged the numbers to basically try and like undercount the true death numbers by thousands. Ron Kim, journalist too, like David Sirota, but Ron Kim was really on a lonely political island screaming from the rooftops about this. So credit to him for sure. And yeah, I wanted to have him on because, you know, there's been a lot of commentary and analysis about Chris Cuomo's firing. And frankly, I think it's, you know, we can point to Chris Cuomo and his total breach of journalistic ethics. Frankly, I don't even think he was a journalist to begin with, if you watched his show. But CNN should be held responsible too. Why in the world was Governor Cuomo coming on with his brother for interviews during a pandemic? Riddle me that. Can somebody tell me why that was appropriate? That was CNN's decision to let Chris Cuomo do puff interviews, slobbering softballs. Remember the interview where they both had the big nasal swab that they were poking up Governor Cuomo's big nose and they were laughing? How many people died while that was going on? Not that I think, you know, Andy Cooper or Jake Tupperware or any of the other riffraff at CNN would particularly be that much tougher, but at least don't have your brother interviewing the governor of the biggest, the governor of one of the largest states in the country that had the worst COVID outbreak, the highest death count in New York. Yeah, he shouldn't have been interviewing him. But Jeff Zucker, the president of CNN, allowed it. Why? Because of his ratings. Because Andrew Cuomo's press conferences every day, giving the updates from New York on COVID, they were having a huge numbers. And as we saw with CNN giving Donald Trump like billions of dollars of free airtime. You remember CNN showing Donald Trump's empty podium for like a half hour instead of showing packed Bernie Sanders rallies? I remember I was literally in Washington Square Park in 2016 covering a mega Bernie Sanders rally. Inside the park was 28,000 people in New York City for Bernie Sanders. Riddle me this. Jordan's wearing a green shirt today, like the Riddler. Thank you. And by the way, smash that like button. We got 200 people watching. Every single person, press the like button because I got more stories to cover. But I need every single person to press the like button so we can get this to more people. YouTube has been strangling this channel for dear life. So I need you to like, share, all that. So it's just CNN and Jeff Zucker. I mean, it's just, they're not real journalists anyway, but it's crossing another line to have your brother, your governor, the brother of the governor be interviewing him. At least if you had, I don't know, I guess Anderson Cooper interviewing him, maybe it would have been a little less slobbering, maybe some provocative questions, maybe challenge him once on things. So that mistake number one. Secondly, I mean, do we really think this stops at Chris Cuomo? Not just on CNN, MSNBC. This is how the corporate media works. All of these anchors, they're at parties. They're at cocktail parties that politicians are at. They're at cocktail parties that donors are at. They're at cocktail parties that real estate developers are at. They're all swimming in the same elite, bourgeoisie, plutocratic circles. So if you think Chris Cuomo is the only anchor or journalist at CNN that's in communication with politicians, hunky-dory, comrade, friendly banter. I mean, it just came out that Jussie Smollett, the former, what show was that? Glee, I think. I'm not down with pop culture. That Don Lemon was tipping off Jussie Smollett. Am I pronouncing his name right? Is it Jesse or Jussie? I don't want to sound like an idiot. Hold on. Jussie Smollett. It just came out that Don Lemon, Chris Cuomo's BFF at CNN, Don Lemon was tipping off Jussie Smollett that the police weren't buying his story of being attacked by a hate crime. So it's not just Chris Cuomo. There's other anchors and reporters at CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, Washington Post. They're all swimming in the same exact circles. That's why corporate media maintains the status quo. That's why we created the Status Coup. Because honestly, why do you think nothing changes in this country? Yeah, politicians are corrupt, but we live in the United Corporations of America, and the corporate media covers up the corruption. So frankly, I think Jeff Zucker, the president of CNN, should have to stand down. He allowed them to, Chris Cuomo to interview his brother and slobber all over each other during the heart of the pandemic. Frankly, if he didn't know that Chris Cuomo was heavily involved in damage control and spinning and trying to do opposition research to try and get dirt on some of the women that were making accusations against Governor Cuomo, sexual harassment accusations. I don't know, you're the president of CNN. You probably should have known that what he was up to. Like Assemblymember Ron Kim and I were talking about, I'd like to know if Chris Cuomo was texting and emailing with his brother's staff while they were doctoring the true death toll at COVID nursing homes. If Chris Cuomo was in the thick and in the trenches with Governor Cuomo's staff about the sexual harassment claims, why wouldn't we think he was doing the same exact thing to try and fudge the numbers and cover up the true death toll? So there's a lot of questions that remain, but I wanted to cover the story from the angle of the nursing homes, because frankly, I think Chris Cuomo should have been fired for that, for helping his governor brother to completely whitewash the whole thing. For basically, I mean, Chris Cuomo and most of CNN barely covered the nursing home scandal. The only ones that did, frankly, were Fox News, obviously, because it was a Democrat. They're not going to cover it if it was a Republican. So, but we'll see. I'm sure CNN's going to replace Chris Cuomo with an equally cringe anchor. Maybe that anchor won't be the brother or sister of a sitting governor, but this is not just a Chris Cuomo problem. This is a CNN problem. It's a corporate media problem. And let me tell you something. I have seen, there have been one or two times I've been at these kind of corporate cocktail parties in my previous days working at MSNBC. And I could tell you, anchors, politicians, bigwig donors, bigwig real estate people, they're all at the same events. So let's not just think that it's only Chris Cuomo who's in communications with politicians, or Don Lemon tipping off celebrities. I digress. I want to move on to another story. So, Colin, if you have this, President Biden, in addition to numbers came out today that he's not doing so well among Latino voters, Biden has tanked among younger voters. Shocking. Polls show the president's approval rating has fallen sharply among a key component of the Democratic base, younger voters. Younger Americans are a key part of Democrats' base, but they have soured on President Biden. Polling shows, despite winning roughly 3 in 5 voters under the age of 30, Biden's approval rating slipped below 50% among the youngest segment of the electorate. That includes a new Harvard youth poll released Wednesday that pegs Biden at 46% approval among Americans aged 18 to 29, compared to 51% who disapprove. I'm surprised, frankly, is even at 46% among age 18 to 29. It's a 13-point drop for Biden from March, when 59% of young Americans approved of the job Biden was doing. The slippage is consistent with other polling, which portrays an across-the-board polling rut for the president. And it's a warning sign ahead of next year's midterm elections, when Democrats will be trying to convince younger voters who are more likely to sit out non-presidential elections to show up at the polls. Quote, "You can clearly make the argument that, along with other important subgroups, young people were essential to Biden's victory and the Democratic Senate," said John Della Volpe, the director of polling at the Harvard Kennedy School. But despite Biden's slide, Della Volpe said young Americans are not unplugging from politics a year after helping him defeat then President Trump. A little more than a third, 37%, said they definitely plan to vote next November, a number that Della Volpe noted was equal to what the Harvard Youth Poll measured in spring 2018. Quote, "I see them continuing to be engaged politically." So I think this is important. I think this is important because, frankly, I've said all along, Biden is very, very lucky. Very, very lucky. And by the way, keep those super chats coming. I'll read them at the end. Biden is very, very lucky, frankly, that he was running against a president that it's just a historic bungling of the pandemic, a historic mismanagement of the pandemic. I mean, if you look at Donald Trump, if he would have sent out an extra $2,000 check in August or September of 2020, if he would have taken COVID even a little bit more serious, if he wouldn't have had this culture war against masks, if he wouldn't have held rallies, 10,000 people maskless, I was at one of them, if he wouldn't have lied about the pandemic, he probably would have won very convincingly, possibly in a landslide. Joe Biden is very lucky. And Joe Biden had more younger voters come out, not because they love themselves Joe Biden, but because younger voters and the increased amount of Black and Latino voters wanted Trump out, and they were willing to vote for a goddamn paper bag to make it happen. So younger voters, they were on the Bernie train, and they don't have any allegiance to Joe Biden. So guess what? When younger voters, who are the most threatened and affected by the climate crisis, when they see that Biden is doing jack shit on the climate crisis, when they see that Biden has sat in fetal position and allowed President Manchin and Queen Sinema to completely strip down the $3.5 trillion reconciliation deal to make the climate provisions a joke. I'm sorry, Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna. You could try and sell rump roast as, filet mignon, but the provisions of the Build Back Better plan, which who knows if it's even going to get out, if it's even going to get passed at this point, are a joke. Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal want you to look, $400-500 billion in new investments. Yeah, well, if it's a car, look underneath the hood. It's all neoliberal tax incentives. Nothing actually with teeth. It's literally tax incentives for utilities and things like that. There's nothing mandatory. The only thing that did have teeth, which was energy utilities, had to move over to renewable energy, and if they didn't, they would be fined. That was stripped out. Why? Because Joe Manchin said so. By the way, there's a whole lot of money as part of that the climate provisions of the Build Back Better Act that go towards carbon capture, where the government would be paying, an obscene amount of money to retrofit coal plants in Joe Manchin's West Virginia and elsewhere to add carbon capture equipment, which is, if you talk to climate experts, is the most wasteful, the most expensive thing you could do. Much cheaper and better for the climate to switch to renewables. So they see young people, Biden's not doing anything on climate change. Biden, one of the only things he ran on was a $15 minimum wage. He literally preemptively surrendered, citing the ridiculous parliamentarian, which Nobody believes that Joe Biden couldn't push and pass through the democratically controlled House and Senate a $15 minimum wage because of an unelected parliamentarian. Hold on a sec. So it's just the whole thing is laughable. If you're a young person, maybe you said, "Oh, I don't like Biden, but at least he's talking about a public option." When's the last time you heard about a public option? Huh? You don't hear that from Joe Biden anymore. If you're a young person, Biden ran on police reform. You hear anything about police reform these days? You're a young person getting back to climate change. Biden ran on banning drilling on public lands, which, by the way, was not enough anyway, because we need to ban drilling, period. He's trying to expand drilling now, handing out more drilling permits. I mean, it's one betrayal after another. And, you know, one thing, you got to give it to Donald Trump. He kept his promises. They were awful, you know, build the wall, ban the Muslims, tax cuts for the rich, the new NAFTA, which is basically shitty like the old NAFTA, but he kept his promises. Biden hasn't kept one promise. A $2,000 check became a $1,400 check. No $15 minimum wage, which, by the way, was the conservative option. We really need closer to a $25 to $30 minimum wage. Even if that minimum wage had passed in January or February, it was being phased in over 5 years. Gone. Public option, gone. Police reform, gone. Credit to Biden getting out of Afghanistan, but okay. Are we completely out of Afghanistan? What about all the private contractors in Afghanistan? Now Biden is pushing 600, what is it, 600 million or billion? Let me make sure I have it. Biden, Saudi Arabia, weapons deal. This is $650 million sale of air-to-air missiles to Saudi Arabia. Biden says, oh, no. It's not weapons to kill children in Yemen. It's weapons to defend for Saudi Arabia to defend themselves. Sure. So no wonder young people are not engaged or not supporting Biden. And by the way, I don't even know if I believe that poll. They said that the poll said that 46%, his approval is at 46% among people age 18 to 29. That seems kind of high. It's a Harvard youth poll. I'll put it in the super chat if you want to read it. 46%? I don't know. I'd have to look into the methodology of that poll. Seems kind of high to me. Yeah, don't diss Jordan in the chat. Whoever's dissing me, I don't like that. No, you could diss me if you want. It's a free country. Technically, it's a free country. So I think this is more and more, the numbers are becoming staggering between Biden's overall disapproval, his overall approval numbers going down. There were numbers that came out today as far as his Latino support is fairly low. Now you have young voters are low. And what is he doing to actually change that? Does he actually think, are the Democrats stupid enough to think that they're going to galvanize the youth through their infrastructure deal that passed? An infrastructure deal that is basically a deal of a privatization on steroids deal that's literally going to be selling off public waterways and sewer systems to private corporations, and the money that the government makes from those sales to basically privatize our public systems, they're going to use to build more infrastructure. By the way, it's only $500 billion in new money, even though the price tag says 1.2 trillion. It's actually 500 billion in new money. The rest of it was already allotted. And experts said we needed $3 to $4 trillion. This was 3 years ago. They said that to keep up with our crumbling infrastructure. So the infrastructure deal, Band-Aid to a gunshot wound. Yeah, it'll build some new bridges, repair some roads. Some, there are things in there for rural broadband and things like that, which is very positive. But I don't think that's going to move younger voters. I don't think that's going to galvanize or excite Black voters, Latino voters. You already saw Trump, just shockingly, did better among black voters in 2020 than he did in 2016. Did better among Latino voters in 2020 than he did in 2016. You just saw what happened in Virginia with Republicans who kind of stay away from Trump, and Glenn Youngkin beat neoliberal BFF of the Clintons, Terry McAuliffe, convincingly. So I don't know. Just don't know. It's not looking good. And I want to also move on. This is just basically going to be a standard rant. The House passes $768 billion defense bill. Let me repeat. $768 billion defense bill just passed. This is more money than was asked for. This is more money than Biden even asked for. Just passed. In what world should we take seriously this president and the Democratic Party constantly, wringing their hands over how we're going to pay for things? In what world? In what world should we take seriously Joe Biden and the Democratic Party talking about, oh, it's too expensive to send at-home COVID tests to every American? In what world is it okay that they are saying, oh, no, you'll be reimbursed for at-home COVID tests from your insurance? Yeah. What about those without insurance? I guess tough shit, luck of the draw. If you don't have insurance, you don't get an at-home COVID test as cases are rising. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And this nonsense theater and bullshit about, oh, no, well, we got a means test. We got a means test, universal pre-K. We got a means test, child care. We got a means test, elder care. All of these provisions in the Build Back Better plan. We gotta lower the climate bill. A lot of this coming from Manchin and Sinema, but let's face it, Manchin and Sinema have in some ways been the individuals blamed for blocking the Build Back Better Act, but a lot of the Democratic Party agrees with them and wants to means test all these things and thinks we can't have nice things and thinks we need to focus on how we're going to pay for it and the price tags. But these same exact people, not even blinking, voted yes for a $768 billion defense bill. Colin, let's get back to this. I want to read it. The House on Tuesday overwhelmingly passed the $768 billion defense policy bill after lawmakers abruptly dropped proposals that would have required women to register for the draft, repealed the 2002 authorization of the Iraq War, and imposed sanctions for a Russian gas pipeline. So literally, these were, I guess, add-ons that people were pushing for. The legislation unveiled hours before the vote put the Democratic-led Congress on track to increase the Pentagon's budget by roughly $24 billion above what Biden had asked for, angering anti-war progressives who had hoped that their party's control of the White House and both houses of Congress would lead to cuts to military programs after decades of growth. Instead, the measure provides significant increases for initiatives intended to counter China and bolster Ukraine, as well as the procurement of new aircraft and ships, underscoring the bipartisan consensus on Capitol Hill for continuing to spend huge amounts of federal money on defense initiatives. So, I don't know, call me a simpleton. Why would you have to increase the Pentagon budget by $24 billion if you just ended a war? Shouldn't there be savings in ending a war? Afghanistan costs between $1 and $2 trillion over 20 years. But the military budget's going up? How does that square with defense? Hey, by the way, all this money for the defense budget, when are they going to put some money to Hawaii? I just interviewed an expert yesterday, Hawaii's water has been contaminated by the U.S. Navy, who since World War II has had diesel and jet fuel stored underneath the mountain with only 100 feet separating the bottom of these fuel tanks and the aquifer. And the fuel, diesel and jet fuel, have been leaking for decades. But now it's just coming to light. And the Hawaii Health Department has ordered the U.S. Navy to shut down this Red Hill fuel storage facility. The U.S. Navy knew about these leaks, knew about this high levels of lead, high levels of oil, high levels of diesel fuel for decades. Yes, Abby Martin and the Empire Files did a piece on this, a great piece. Abby's been leading the charge on this, and I interviewed Lori Lou Freshwater yesterday. You might have not seen it because YouTube's hiding this channel. It's up on the channel, our live stream yesterday. I interviewed her for about a half hour. Lori Lou Freshwater is actually a survivor of the Camp Lejeune water contamination. If you don't know, Camp Lejeune was a Marine Corps base in North Carolina. It had one of the largest water contaminations in American history. The Marine Corps, they were contaminating that Marine Corps base from the 1950s all the way through the 80s. Contaminants from an off-base dry cleaner, but also benzene and diesel fuel from the base, from the Marine Corps that was contaminating and getting into the water. There's a grave near Camp Lejeune, all of babies that died. There are children that got leukemia. And shockingly, the Marine Corps and the U.S. military denied it, tried to cover it up. And then when they couldn't cover it up anymore, tried to lowball and not provide health care. It took 30, 40 years of survivors of the Camp Lejeune disaster fighting until for Obama to sign relief for them in 2012. Now, in Hawaii, the water near Pearl Harbor and on Pearl Harbor on the base, Red Hill, contaminated. So we're going to give $768 billion for the defense budget. We're not going to give money for the water contamination in Hawaii or Camp Lejeune or the countless other military bases and Army locations that are poisoning people's water. Oh, by the way, the Army, the U.S. military, the biggest purveyor and culprit and global carbon emitter, the U.S. military emits more carbon than anyone in the world. Lost adults. Again, not diesel fuel. The Department of the Navy buys JP5, which is diesel fuel with extra methyl. I can't pronounce that. My understanding is what's in these tanks is jet and diesel fuel. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding based on the reports and based on Abby Martin's reporting. So it's just insane. And frankly, at a certain point, I would never suggest violence. I don't think violence is going to get us anywhere. But at a certain point, you're going to need economic boycotts in this country. And right now, you're seeing the worker strikes going on. John Deere just successfully went on strike and got a new contract. We were on the ground covering that in Iowa. Starbucks workers are on the cusp. The votes are starting to get counted today for their union election. They might become, in Buffalo, the first Starbucks in the country to get unionized. Amazon workers are fighting for a union. The Frito-Lay workers successfully went on strike and got a new contract. The Nabisco workers successfully went on strike and got a new contract. Mercy Hospital workers went on strike and got a new contract. I interviewed them in Buffalo. I interviewed the John Deere workers in Iowa and Illinois. I interviewed the Starbucks workers in Buffalo. You, Status Coup members, if you remember, you funded all that. We'd like to do more. We'd like to cover more of these stories on the ground. We need you. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for $5 a month. But bigger than all that, at a certain point, this is the same. This is like same broken record, or that same record, broken, whatever the pun is. Literally, literally, we're going to be at the point in a year or two where the U.S. military budget is at $1 trillion, and frankly, it already is at $1 trillion. When you factor in the CIA, the FBI, the fact that the Pentagon is never audited, literally, there were attempts to audit the Pentagon. The Pentagon said we're not auditable. Not to mention the budget for black ops and underground ops that the U.S. military has in different parts of the world. We're probably well over $1 trillion a year for the U.S. military. Yet we allow politicians at the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, and the rest of the gang to gaslight us on, oh, well, no, we got to figure out a way to pay for it. We got to figure out a way to pay for it while increasing by $24 billion the defense budget. And we allow them to then say things like this. Here's Jen Psaki, the president's press secretary, when asked about why can't we just send free COVID tests, just mail them to citizens, at-home tests.
What we've done over the course of time, we've quadrupled the size of our testing plan. We've cut the cost significantly over the past few months, and this effort to push to ensure insurers you're able to get your tests refunded means 150 million Americans will be able to get free tests.
Complicated though. Why not just make them free and give them out and have them available everywhere?
Should we just send one to every American?
Maybe.
Then what happens if every American has one test? How much does that cost, and then what happens after that?
All I know is that other countries seem to be making them available in greater quantities for less money.
Well, I think we share the same objective, which is to make them less expensive and more accessible, right? Every country's going to do that differently, and I was just noting that, again, our tests go through the FDA approval process. That's not the...
Sorry, I was trying to sneak in some food. Colin, can we play that one more time? Because there's a part of that is really, really important. Really, really important, and I want to stress it. Make it.
What we've done over the course of time, we've quadrupled the size of our testing plan. We've cut the cost significantly over the past few months, and this effort to push to ensure insurers you're able to get your tests refunded means 150 million Americans will be able to get free tests.
Complicated though. Why not just make them free and give them out and have them available everywhere?
Should we just send one to every American?
Maybe.
Then what happens if every American has one test? How much does that cost, and then what happens after that?
All I know is that other countries seem to be making them available in greater quantities for less money.
Well, I think we share the same objective, which is to make them less expensive and more accessible, right? Every country's going to do that differently, and I was just noting that, again, our tests go through the FDA approval process. That's not the
phrase from that reporter who asked the question, and my apologies, I don't know the name of the reporter. Key phrase: available in greater quantity for less money. You know what other countries make available in greater quantity for less money than the United Corporations of America? Healthcare. The United Corporations of America provides less healthcare at greater cost than any industrial country in the world, compared to far less wealthy countries. Why? Because they don't have this corrupt middleman. Because they don't have this corrupt middleman that is the pharmaceutical industry. Well, they have a pharmaceutical industry, but they don't have this middleman of an expansive private insurance industry with co-insurance and deductibles and co-pays and all this crap, all this unnecessary crap, all these unnecessary bills. You're just paying a corrupt middleman. They don't have it. I was eating Chipotle, not so healthy, for whoever asked. It's the first thing I've eaten all day, by the way. But to think that the press secretary, who, by the way, the media slobbers over Jen Psaki, they think she's the best thing since sliced bread. They don't have surprise medical billing either. Good point. To think that her response is, oh, so we're just supposed to send one free to everybody? How much is that going to cost? Again, they are putting a price on life. Because I got news for you. I'm not interested in getting into it with anti-vaxxers and all that, whatever. If you're an anti-vaxxer and, you're one of those and, you're doing 100 videos a week, anti-vax, I don't have the energy to deal with you. Enjoy the clicks and gaining a right-wing audience. But to sane people, it will cost less, ultimately, if we send everybody a 10-pack of at-home COVID tests. For a family of 4, send 15 to 20. So if they're not feeling well, they can take a test. Sure, there is asymptomatic spread, but generally speaking, most people, particularly with the Delta variant, we don't really know in terms of the Omicron variant because there's not enough data, but at least with the Delta variant, most people who contract COVID, if you're vaccinated, you'll have mild symptoms, generally speaking, not get hospitalized or die. If you're unvaccinated, you'll have more severe symptoms. But most people have some symptoms to know that they would know, let me go take a test. Then, if you are positive because you have access to that at-home test, you could quarantine. This helps shrink and lower the amount of spread. You lower the amount of spread, we're not going to totally get rid of this pandemic. It will probably be here in endemic form, like a seasonal flu or something like that eventually. But if you could get more people access to testing, meaning more people will be able to know if they're positive and then quarantine themselves from the public, you have less spread, less death, less hospitals being overrun, and less economic disruption. But no, that will cost too much. I.e., yeah, the donors won't allow that. We can't be sending tests to people free during a pandemic. No. Big Pharma won't allow that. It's just shocking. Build back better. No. That response is there's no such thing as a free lunch, even during a pandemic. Absolutely vile and disgusting. Vile and disgusting. Democrats are going to get their clock cleaned in the midterms. And to be clear, the Republicans are just as bad, if not worse. I mean, frankly, if you see this Republican Party, I don't know whether to cry or laugh. I mean, Lauren Boebert, these disgusting, vile attacks on Ilhan Omar, Jihad Squad, just blanket Islamophobia and disgustingness. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, there's some of these Republicans might as well be part of QAnon. It's coming out now. Some of these Republicans were just directly working with January 6th protesters. So the Republican Party, terrible. There's no false equivalency here. But frankly, why is the Republican Party going to win in a landslide during the midterms next year? Because there's no opposition party. There is no real left opposition to the extremist Republicans. That is why I criticize the Democratic Party. That is why I cover the Democratic Party so much, because we don't have an opposition party. Frankly, we have progressives in the Democratic Party. They might agree with us on the policy, but they sure don't seem to know how to fight. They sure do not seem to know how to fight, how to use their power, how to play hardball. I mean, hell, when I interviewed Ro Khanna, credit that he came on. It's a lot more than I could say for his colleagues. AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Pramila Jayapal, Bernie. They're not exactly going around doing independent media, talking to their base of progressive viewers and voters. But when I asked him, I don't understand. I don't understand it. Why is it that you guys aren't like holding massive rallies in West Virginia or Arizona and just calling out Manchin, pointing out his coal donors, the millions he's making from his coal company, Cinema and Manchin, the oh my God, the donations, the millions of dollars they've been getting from Big Pharma as they're refusing to allow real lowering the price of prescription drugs, lowering the cost of prescription drugs in the Build Back Better plan, as they're refusing to expand Medicare to include vision, hearing, and dental. You don't want to hold a rally to call out Manchin, maybe get media attention on the fact that he has a coal company and that he's made, according to the Intercept's reporting, $4.5 to $5 million as a senator from that coal company, not to mention another $1 to $5 million in stock options. And this is the man that should determine whether we have real climate legislation in this country. So we don't have an opposition party to the extremist Republicans. We don't even have progressives who are willing to fight and be on the receiving end of media scorn. They fold like cheap tents. So the proof will be in the pudding. Proof will be in the pudding. And I will keep those super chats coming. I will read them at the end of this. I think the Republicans are really going to clean up in the midterms, unfortunately. So that's it. Let me read some super chats. I'll read your comments too. Cheryl, $10. Ron Kim for president 2024. That's an interesting take. Poll held with YouTube chat. Is Biden doing good? 92% said no. 7% said yes. Poll complete with 28. We only got 28 votes. Colin, I like that. I like that we're doing polls. It's a good idea. We could get more than 28 votes though. But out of the 28 votes, 92% voted no. Double K, $49.99. Holy cow. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Jay Gannon says, without UBI, truly universal Dems are a relic. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that UBI is only one piece of it. We need a general strike in this country. I don't know how we would get to it, but we really need a general strike in this country because underneath everything, money in politics is rotting this country, which is now the United Corporations of America. Pin the poll at the top of the chat. It's a good idea. Next time we'll do that. You could have UBI, but at the end of the day, all right, let's say Andrew Yang's plan went into effect. We all got $1,000 a month. You see the price gouging going on right now. The corporations and the companies are blaming inflation. No, if you look hard enough, most of them are just price gouging. They don't have to have prices as high as they are. They're doing it to make insane profits. So honestly, unless we get money out of politics, yeah, you might get UBI, $1,000 a month to people, and then companies, all the prices will go up, and that $1,000 will basically not get you that far. The underlying corruption and rot of our system. I mean, we're going to be having the same conversations 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, until we all just become totally, totally hopeless and just stop paying attention. Michael Pashtak, $5. Jordan, thank you for your extensive coverage of all the blatant corruption that no one else is even talking about. Awesome work. Thank you, Michael. And just so you guys know, I'm trying my best to keep the lights on here and keep content going, but there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Obviously, Jen is no longer with us, which I announced a couple of weeks ago. So Colin and I are currently doing a lot of behind the scenes work. A lot of it tedious logistical work, which is taking days and days and days and days and probably weeks, just to kind of reassess things, possibly look for other help. So if you don't see everyday live streams, don't be alarmed. We're just doing a lot of things in the back end. So I'm trying my best to keep the live streams going every day, keep content going, keep investigative reporting going. If you noticed yesterday, we broke a story at our Substack, Status Substack. Colin, if you could put the link to the story in the super chat for those that missed it. We broke a story yesterday. An Amazon worker and union organizer, a worker who's organizing the union, trying to get a union there, was arrested by NYPD while organizing, while doing protected organizing. So we broke that yesterday, trying to do the investigative reporting and the daily live streams while we're handling a lot of logistical behind the scenes things. So if you don't see us live every day, don't be alarmed. We're just trying to get everything into order. Let me read a couple more comments, questions. Tony Dallas, love the report, $5. Love the reporting. Keep up the good work, Jordan. What do you think about working through individual states to do infrastructure, take over assemblies? Honestly, I'm starting to think local politics is the way to go. I think our system federally, without a massive general strike, I think without a massive general strike, I think local elections, trying to change things through your local assembly, your local House of Representatives, your local state Senate, might be the way to go, because it's all corrupt on every level. But it's it's probably easier on the local level for activism to turn into legislation. But that's going to take people fighting and organizing. There's a lot of people who are, spending more time bitching and complaining on the internet and fighting amongst themselves than actually organizing. So I agree with you. I think trying to take over local assemblies definitely is a way to go, because I don't know if progressives will take over Congress in our lifetime. I really don't. Hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I don't know. What I do know is we have seen in this country that mass mobilization is possible. We saw it during the George Floyd protests about a year and a half ago now. We saw that mass mobilization is possible across generations, across races. There were millions of people all around this country protesting. And I always said, imagine if just 1/10 of those protesters with their feet on the ground out at these protests were also protesting with their wallet. The capitalist class, the United Corporations of America, they would not know what to do with themselves if that were the case. So if we've already seen we could get a mass mobilization. That's not easy that's not easy to begin with. But if you could then, with people protesting in the streets, have economic boycotts, it's not going to be a general strike on day one, but you start small. You protest, a massive corporation. You protest banks. You protest the local grocery store doing treating workers poorly in your local community. That is how things will spread. Yes, it did scare the shit out of the elites, the George Floyd protests. It's just a shame that there was no economic component to it. And by the way, just for reference, because I see it sometimes, I know the internet is a cesspool, but God, I just don't understand. There's so many people in the chat that why are you here if to just troll and this and that? I'm not really involved with the moderators in the chat. Our moderators generally don't block anyone or do anything like that unless you're saying some really vile, racist, anti-Semitic, or conspiratorial crap. So, why even be here if that's why you're here? If you have a different opinion than me on something, that's fine. We're not going to block you for that. But if you're spewing racist crap or anti-Semitic crap or COVID conspiracy theories, we don't really have a lot of tolerance for that. Sorry. So before I go, I wanted to remind people, and I'm sorry for the people that have already seen it, but every single day, we need to move more and more people over. So if you're a Status Coup member that signed up before October of this year, if you signed up as a Status Coup member before October of this year, you signed up on our old membership system, which we are trying to get you to move over to our new membership system. Not to bore you with too much in the weeds tech stuff. Our old system, not as reliable. We were finding that there was more and more failure in terms of payments going through. your financial information is secure and fine, not that, just payments not going through on the old system. So we switched to a new membership site, which is actually a separate membership website. And we've had much more success with payments going through. And there's also more things we could do in terms of providing members perks. But we need more people to switch over from the old membership site to the new site. So if you're a Status Coup member who switched over from the old, who signed up before October of this year, if you signed up after October, if you signed up October 1st or after, you don't have to worry about it. If you're a member, please watch this video so we could tell you why we're switching and how you could switch. It's Jordan and Colin with Status Coup. First, we wanted to thank our Status Coup members, those people who have signed up and are supporting us financially every single month, in some cases annually. You guys and gals are the reason that we've been able to fund really critically important on-the-ground reporting all over this country on the stories that the corporate media will not touch.
Corporate media had us believing that we're just lucky to have a job. We're lucky. If you're still at a place that still offers insurance and you're not paying, you're lucky.
You know, they're almost angrier at me than if I had actually taken a pickaxe and murdered 10 people.
We are the heart and soul of Amazon.
You're not talking about like residual scars from 6 years ago. You're talking about stuff you're getting now.
This is in the last 24 hours.
If back to normal means we're back to being underpaid, it means we're back to being worked like dogs, it means that they're back to harassing homeless people, you can keep your normal.
We want to continue all of that kind of reporting and double down doing more. But we need you to help us by switching your membership from our old site to our brand new site. To be clear, if you've signed up as a Status Coup member anytime after October 1st, this does not apply to you. But if you signed up as a Status Coup member before October of this year, what we need you to do is go in to your membership, which Colin will explain how to do, cancel, and then re-sign up at our brand new site. So Colin, why is it that we're asking people to switch over from the old membership site to the new one?
It's twofold. One, for us as Status Coup, it's the new website is dedicated for this membership, so it's just a much more reliable as far as getting the payments through and everything to us. And on your guys' end, it's just going to be a much better experience. You have a dedicated website you can now visit for all of your member content, as well as it gives us the ability to do things we've never been able to do before for members, such as getting a member store exclusively for you guys, more direct contact with you guys through the website, and a bunch of other stuff. So it's just an overall improvement, and also just that adds that reliability and sustainability that we really need.
And I should say, for the member store, we do plan on having exclusive merchandise just for members. So stay tuned for that. That will be coming at some point. Okay, people will ask, all right, you want us to switch? How do we do it?
It's super easy. All you do is just go to StatusCoup.com like you normally do and click on your profile icon in the top right corner. Then you click on subscriptions in the bar there, and then just click cancel subscription, or just cancel. If you don't see a cancel button, instead you see suspend or pause, click that instead. It's functionally the same thing. And after you've done that, head over to the new site just by going to statuscoup.com/join. Then once you get to the new site, just follow the instructions to sign up as a new member on there at whatever level you want to. And you're all set. If you guys run into any issues at all, either on the old site or on the new site, just email info@statuscoup.com. and I'll help you as best as I can to resolve any issues you might encounter.
So super important to get everybody to switch from the old site to the brand new site. I know people don't like having to do things more than once. I promise you, after you move over to the brand new site, we will not ask anything more of you. So thank you guys. Again, if you have any questions or troubleshooting needs, info@statuscoup.com. And in the description of this video, there will also be a link for the member switch page, which gives you directions on how to do this if you have any issues. Thanks again for being a member, and thank you for switching over from our old site to our brand new member site. So the instructions with that video are right underneath the live stream. So right in the description at the top is the member switch link. Pretty simple. We've actually had dozens and dozens of members so far switch over from the old site to the new site. It's a Hanukkah present to me every time I see a member switch over to the new site. Frankly, the old site, when we launched our paid membership program, we were still a small company. We had just started that year in 2018. So we were using kind of a plugin for our membership site. As time went on, we realized, this plugin, the banks for your payments, they are detecting more and more fraud charges, not specifically like for Status Coup, just in general, there's more of a trend in terms of banks kind of looking at payments and detecting fraud, so not letting the payments go through. So that's because of this old membership site that we have been using. So that's why we launched our new membership site, StatusCoupMember.com. Again, StatusCoupMember.com, where we've barely had any payments not go through because it's a lot more reliable. The banks recognize it, less issues with payments going through. And obviously, if we're going to be able to fund on the ground reporting, it's based on our members and, your financial contributions and support. We need your payments to go through. I don't know what other way to say it other than we need the payments to go through. So I know a lot of people don't like having to do things more than once. Again, if you're a Status Coup member, if you're a member that had signed up before October of this year, I kindly ask you, click on the link in the description of this live stream. It should not take you more than a few minutes. If you have any issues, email info@statuscoup.com. That's info@statuscoup.com. And Colin will respond to you and try to troubleshoot it with you. I know he's been responding to a couple people who, hit a speed bump, but helped them and they successfully did it. But we're trying to get pretty much all of our members to switch from the old membership site to the new site. This new site, that's it. Once we get people over, that's where we're staying. So again, if you can, after this live stream, just click on that link. The video is there. So if it's easier for you to follow the video, which has visuals of how you do it, the video is on that link as well as written instructions. So thank you. Also, shout out to Ronnie Graham, sent a $5 tip through Rockfin. Thanks for reporting on the working class. I don't know anybody else that talks to poor working people anywhere else on the internet. Thank you, Ronnie. I'll say that I'm not gonna lie to you. It gets frustrating. It gets frustrating. And by the way, let me put the member switch link one more time in the super chat. There it is in the super chat. So you could just click on there. By the way, if you're not a member and you've never been a member and want to sign up, statuscoup.com/join. Statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 a month. We will be doing another members call this month. Before the end of the year, we'll be doing another members call. The last members call, we had an issue sending it out, and not everybody was able to get on right away. We'll have that fixed for the next members call, which we'll definitely probably do before Christmas. So I appreciate the tip on Rockfin and the comment about covering the working class and how few others are doing it. I got to tell you the truth, Alan. It's hard. It's hard to do the work we do. I'm doing the job typically 4 or 5 people would be doing at another outlet. I do reporting, the daily live. I do investigative reporting behind the scenes. I do try to do the daily live stream. I'm booking guests. I'm producing segments, handling a lot of logistical business stuff that I won't bore you with. I plan the on-the-ground trips and try to line those things up. I'm constantly in communication with sources on stories. So I'm doing a whole lot. And frankly, the stories I cover are not sexy. YouTube is suppressing a lot of those stories. For example, any story I do with Amazon gets very low views because YouTube's algorithm, when they see Amazon in a headline, they bury it even further. That's the Silicon Valley suppression we're dealing with. It's really, really reprehensible. What Silicon Valley, big tech platforms like YouTube, brought to you by Google, are doing. It sucks because I think we cover the really important stories that very few others are doing. and it's not getting to the amount of eyeballs that it should be getting to. With that said, I'm going to keep doing it until I can't do it anymore or until funding runs out, because I think it's important to cover the controlled demolition of the working class. I think it's important to cover massive corruption that has taken over a country. That's why I call it the United Corporations of America. The flag's right behind me. I think it's important to give the microphone back to working people. That's why when we go on the ground, we don't like immediately try to interview politicians or experts. We talk to people and activists and residents and community members, which it sounds simple, but you don't really see these people on cable news. You don't really hear working people or see working people quoted in the New York Times. So yeah, that's why we do what we do, but we can only do it if we're funded. You know, there's a whole, I call it a digital diarrhea, frankly. There's a gazillion YouTube channels out there. Most of them are covering the same exact shit, just different hot takes from different corners of the internet. And a lot of them are asking you to support them financially. And, you know, I'm not here to tell you who to support or not to support, but I am here to tell you there's very few outlets actually on the ground doing on the ground reporting. And that's what we stand for. Obviously, we can't be on the ground 24/7, but that's what we're trying to do here. So I hope if it's within your means, statuscoup.com/join, statuscoup.com/join. You could become a member for as low as $5 a month. There's other plans too at higher levels, but $5 a month, you can become a member. Alan C, $9.99. Keep it up, sir. I will, my friend. Thank you, Alan. All right, folks, that's all I got. Please, please, please sign up if you switch if you can. So if you were a member who signed up before October of this year, the directions to switch are right under this live stream. The directions to switch are right under this live stream. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.